want to thank Dana. Where is he at? Give him a round of applause. There he is, for getting this started. And of course, everybody else who helped the last few days to get the equipment here, the stage, to get things set up. We have a couple of active candidates in the space. If you're an active candidate, would you stand up? I know one of them's back here. Yep. Give a good congratulations to the one brave soul who comes tonight. And let's get our... Yeah, Silverdale Beach Hotel, regular place, regular time, a great presentation. We're going to have 4 candidates or people supporting campaigns that are going to talk directly about how you can actively get involved to make conservative change this season. So this is one of those meetings not to miss. And we'll appreciate you seeing there. Without further then, I think what we'll do is get right to our guest speaker, because you know this man has quite a reputation. He's on the radio, he's on the internet, he's known throughout the United States. He's been seen recently to such far sectors as Spokane. Also, that's pretty close to Spokane. I just heard about that one tonight, but that's where I grew up, so I could laugh about that fondly. The author of a couple of books, including this one here, The Enemy is Within, and I think he's going to talk a little bit about that tonight. Give a great Kitsap round of applause and welcome to Mr. Trevor Loudon.
Thanks very much for the intro, and thanks to Sandy for looking after the books. And thanks to all of you for coming out tonight and welcoming me here. Can you all hear me down the back all right? Can you understand a real southern accent? Okay. Look, it's a real honour to be here. I've been touring your country for the last 3 years, talking to Tea Party and conservative groups. Your government gives me 90-day visas to visit the United States, but I'm very tempted to stay for 91 days because apparently I'll get a free cell phone. I'm hanging out for it.
Just come over the southern border. You can
yeah, I know, I get healthcare as well. But look, people always ask me, they say, why do I care about the United States? And I say there are 2 basic reasons. The first is gratitude. My country was only saved from invasion by the Japanese in World War II by the massive sacrifice of your fathers and uncles and grandfathers at the battles of Guadalcanal and the Coral Sea and Midway. Well, we understand what that cost, folks, and what it did for us. The second reason is related, but it's a bit more selfish. Ronald Reagan had it right. This is the last best hope for mankind. If freedom should fail in the United States, if you lose your constitution, your liberty, your economic dynamism, and your military superiority, all of which are in grave danger, the bad guys of this planet are going to carve up the world amongst themselves. I'm talking Russia, China, Iran, Cuba, Nicaragua, Venezuela, North Korea, and their Islamic allies. And I get emails all the time, people, from folks who say to me, look, if things turn bad in America, can I come and live in New Zealand? And I say, look, come down for a visit, you'll love it, but it's not a refuge. You know, just 1,500 miles to the north of my country, lie the beautiful Fijian Islands. Wonderful tourist destination, but the Chinese are now training the Fijian military. They're building big hydro dams on the islands. They want a port in that country. Tonga is pretty much in the same way as are several other of the Pacific microstates. A couple of years ago, the Australian Minister of Defence, and if you're not sure, Australia is a small island off our west coast. But he was up in China for talks, and a top giant Chinese general publicly embarrassed him. He said, now is the time for Australia to choose. You need a godfather. Will it be an American godfather or a Chinese godfather? If you are smart, you'll choose China, because we are the growing power in the region. Now, he wouldn't have been cocky enough to say that under Bush, even under Clinton, certainly not under Reagan, but he's arrogant enough to say it now because he sees the leadership coming out of your White House. And all around this planet, folks, your allies are freaking out. Israel, Germany, Britain, Canada, South Korea, Japan, Taiwan, Australia, they're all freaking out, folks, because they see that your president loves the bad guys of the world more than he loves them. And you saw what happened when your president called for support to go into Syria. How many of your allies climbed on board, folks? None. I'm not saying they should have. It was madness. But that shows where American prestige is going right now. Your allies look at America, folks, and they say, is it worth being America's friend any longer? They saw what Obama did to Poland and Czechoslovakia. One of his first acts of office was to take away their missile shield, protecting them from the Russians. Then they saw him abandon Georgia to the Russians. After all those people had done to break away, Obama sold them straight back. And now they're looking at the Ukraine, folks. The Ukraine is trying to break out of Moscow's grasp. Whoever wins that struggle is going to dominate Europe. Our futures depend on that fight, people. The Ukrainians have a treaty signed in your Senate to guarantee American military protection in the event of Russian military aggression. They gave up their nuclear arsenal in exchange for an American promise of protection. And now that they need it, folks, where is it? So far, Obama has sent them $5 million of non-lethal aid and John Kerry. Which is more insulting, folks? The worst thing that John Kerry would ever do to the Russians is cut off their ketchup supplies. People, but he also, to be fair and balanced, Obama also has put some sanctions on some rich Russians to terrify Mr. Putin into submission. I saw a rally the other day in downtown Moscow. A woman held up a sign that showed the Russian attitude to those sanctions. The sign said, "Your porn is harder than your sanctions." People, Vladimir Putin spent most of his life trying to destroy your country. It's in the KGB. And now he says himself there is no such thing as a former KGB agent. Yet he is held in more esteem on the world stage right now than the so-called leader of the free world. That's causing problems, folks, because your allies are backing away from you and your enemies are getting stronger and stronger. China is building a big blue water navy in the Pacific. They have control of most of Africa, a lot of control in this country and Latin America. Russia is clearly intent on re-establishing the old Russian Empire, the Soviet Empire, and are working hand in glove with the Chinese, by the way. Iran wants to dominate the Middle East. Iraq and Syria are dissolving into chaos. They may set up a caliphate there, a terrorist caliphate like nothing we've ever seen before. Terrorists are coming across your southern borders in droves. The world economy teeters on the brink. And Obama thinks this is the time that peace is breaking out, folks, and this is the time to gut your military. You know, and I haven't mentioned electromagnetic pulse weapons. We know that the Iranians and North Koreans are testing EMP weapons, 6 atomic bombs fired into your upper atmosphere from a trawler 5 miles off your coast would fry the electrical grid in the whole country for years. Your own government has said if that ever happens, 80% of Americans will be dead within a year. And this is a time of peace, folks. This is a time where Obama wants to put your Navy back to pre-World War II levels, where he's wiping out whole weapon systems, getting rid of thousands of officers out of the military, driving many more out with the gay policy and women in combat. Your morale and your military has never been lower, folks. It's rock bottom. Purging generals. He says you have to fight, prepare your military force for a one-front war. One front, people. Russia, China, Iran, Latin America, and radical Islam. How many fronts is that, folks? Because they're all allies, people. If one of them takes you on, they all will. This isn't about a depression, folks, because you're Americans. You can fight out of a depression. This isn't about losing some of your rights, guys, because you're Americans and you'll stand up and take them back. You've done it many times. But have you ever been in a position before when your commander-in-chief is alienating your allies, empowering your enemies, and destroying your military right before your eyes? Where's that going to lead, guys? Obama has abandoned Reagan's doctrine of peace through strength. And when you lose your strength, folks, what's going to happen to your peace? What's happening around the world right now? Would any of this stuff be going on if there was a Reagan in the White House, folks? But it's happening now because you've got a president who's at best neutral to the bad guys and at worst on their side. He's helping them, people. And he is crying peace all the time, got a Nobel Peace Prize in his trophy cabinet, yet he is leading the world into a war, folks. And it's a war that the good guys may not win. And at very best, it could cost millions of your lives. Millions, folks. That's the consequence of the last election. This is serious, people. You got to think Obama was nurtured by pro-Soviet communists his entire life. Frank Marshall Davis in Hawaii, Alice Palmer in Chicago, the woman who got him his first job, a bona fide Soviet agent. Their agenda was always to destroy the United States military. That was their #1 priority. And who has done more, folks, to alienate your allies and gut your military than this current man? Has anyone come close? So these are the consequences of what's happening right now, folks. The most significant thing your president said in his entire first term of office, when he was caught off mic in South Korea, thought no one was listening, talking to then Russian President Dmitry Medvedev. Yes, Mr. Medvedev, when I get re-elected, I'll have more flexibility to deal with you. Yes, said Medvedev, I understand. I will pass your message on to Vladimir. We are with you. How much more warning do you need, folks? How much more blatant does it need to get? Now, my books, I only have one of them here today, unfortunately. My first book was Barack Obama and the Enemies Within. 700 pages, folks, on Obama's communist and pro-Soviet ties. And I'll tell you straight, that was a very big book. And I got bloody sick of lugging that around the country. Very heavy. And I vowed and declared that my next book would be smaller and lighter. And this one is The Enemies Within, Communists, Socialists and Progressives in the US Congress. And guess what, people? It's bigger. Because those commies just kept on coming, folks. The more I dug, the deeper I dug, the more I found. And I couldn't leave out Paddy Murray, could I? Couldn't leave out Baghdad Jim McDermott, could I? And who's your other, Maria Cantwell? Couldn't leave her out. They were all on there, all profile, all hardcore anti-American ties. Now the book is really about the two big secrets of modern communism. And the first secret, I think they borrowed from the devil. Because we all know that the cleverest thing the devil ever did was to convince people he doesn't exist. What have the communists done in the last 20 years, folks? They've pretty much convinced us that, haven't they? We all know they don't exist. They're no longer a threat, right? We're all convinced. The second big secret of modern communism, which is hardly ever discussed in all the thousands of books on the subject, it is the ability of a tiny Marxist-Leninist party maybe only a few hundred comrades strong, to influence and even control the legislative process in their country. In other words, to write the laws. So what I'm saying is, less than 20,000 card-carrying communists in your country are writing the laws that control the lives of more than 300 million Americans. Right now, folks. Bit far-fetched, isn't it? Very small tail wagging a very big dog. Well, the mechanism, when the communists stand for public office under their own steam, which they do occasionally under their own name, which they do for laughs, they usually get about 89 votes, except for Kawana Sawant, who actually won her seat, which is a bit of a miracle. But anyway, people usually laugh at them. They get tiny little totals. But is it just the number of votes you get? Is that the only thing that determines your level of political influence? How many votes did Al Capone ever get in Chicago, folks? How many votes did the mob ever get in Vegas? Therefore, they couldn't have run those towns right. Bribery, corruption, thuggery, intimidation, vote fraud, indoctrination, blackmail, propaganda. There's a whole bunch of ways that small organised groups can control much larger groups from behind the scenes. And that's what the science of Leninism is all about, folks. It is small groups controlling large groups. Forget the Marxism, people, that's garbage. But the Leninism is a very effective science. Lenin led 2,000 Bolsheviks in 1917. They were able to take over a country of 140 million people and hold them in slavery for more than 80 years. And I say still do. And they've had 100 years to get almost to get better and better at it, people. The mechanism they use in this country to promote their policies is mainly control of the labour unions. Now, you're very lucky for a long time because your AFL-CIO was run by hardcore anti-communists like Lane Kirkland and George Meany. But in 1995, folks, everything changed. Your politics did a complete circle. And I bet you never heard a word about it. That was the year that Democratic Socialists of America, a Gramsciist communist group, your largest Marxist group, that was the year they took over the AFL-CIO. They got rid of Lane Kirkland and they put their member, John Sweeney, in as president, and now their protege, Richard Trumka, runs it for them. They then went on to take over every single major labour union in the country. You name it, folks, they own it. AFSCME, SCIU, NEA, you name it, they run it. What that did, people, is give them effective control of the Democratic Party. Ever wondered why the Democrats, who were once quite conservative, many of them, have gone so far to the left in the last 15 years? That's why, people, because the Marxists took over the unions and then they took out the Democrats. They purged all the centrists, all the moderates, all the Dixiecrats. The last one to fall was Joe Lieberman, the senator from Connecticut. Now they own that party. And if you think of this, people, like you might say, well, you know, the union's 11–12% of the workforce, big deal. You tell me, folks, one elected Democrat in this country from county commission to federal level who doesn't owe his job to the unions. Can you name one? They need the unions, folks, for money, for manpower, get out the vote, even vote fraud. There'd be nothing without the unions. So if you're a Democrat and a union guy comes to you and says, promote this policy or else, what are you going to do, folks? You're going to do what you're damn well told. So the process is very simple. The Marxists set a policy. It might be socialisation of student loans, or green jobs, or cap and trade, or card check, or normalisation of relations with Cuba, or Obamacare. They set a policy, they make it union policy, and the unions make it Democrat policy. There's not a policy in today's Democratic Party that can't be directly traced back to the Marxists in this country. They are completely running their agenda, folks. Now I want to give an example, I have several, I want to give one that's very current right now. It's called Comprehensive Immigration Reform, otherwise known as amnesty. Now this has split the Republican Party, it's split even elements of the Conservative movement. You have Republicans like Lindsey Graham and John Boehner, who is hell-bent on passing this, and John McCain and Marco Rubio, who are telling you this is good for the GOP. Because if you give citizenship and voting rights to 11, 12 women in California, Maria Elena Durazzo, head of the California AFL-CIO, a hardcore Marxist. She is behind the massive union-driven and union-paid-for Latino voter registration drives and get-out-the-vote efforts that have added hundreds of thousands of new Latino voters to the California rolls in the last 15 years, almost all of them Democrats. The work of these people, all Marxists, has turned California from a reddish, purplish state to solidly blue. Solidly blue, folks. Orange County, once the single most conservative county in the entire United States, is now purple as a result of the work of these people. A deliberate Marxist program to change the voting patterns in your largest state. Now, who is leading it right now, folks? It's a man called Eliseo Medina. And I guarantee you've seen him on TV wearing a purple shirt leading an immigration rally. He was until recently one of the leaders of the SEIU union, largest private sector union in your country and the one with the biggest Latino membership. Medina is the man who got the immigration bill pushed through your Senate, and he's been using his union members all over this country to rally outside the offices of Republican congressmen to get them to flip their vote to get a bill through the House. Medina is a card-carrying member of Democratic Socialists of America. He's a Marxist. He supports the Communist Party USA. He's a former member of Obama's Latino Advisory Committee. And he was personally consulted by the President before Obama started this latest push for amnesty. He also works very closely with Luis Gutierrez, the rep from Illinois, who is driving the immigration issue in the House of Representatives. Gutierrez is a former member of the pro-Cuban, Marxist-Leninist Puerto Rican Socialist Party. Now, any current or former union members here tonight? Current or former union members, okay? Okay, I'll ask you a question. 25, you might be a bit young, ma'am, but 25 years ago, which organisation in this country was leading the charge against illegal immigration? Against. Was it, people? It was the AFL-CIO, the unions. Because they saw quite correctly that illegal immigrants were unfair competition for union members and would drive wages and conditions down. Drive them out the bottom, folks, cost jobs. They didn't want it. Constantly lobbying Congress to increase penalties on any employer caught employing illegal immigrants. So in 2014, people, which organisation is leading the charge to legalise illegal immigrants? Same people. AFL, CIO and SEIU. So why was it bad for union workers 25 years ago, but it's okay now? This is the reason, folks. Before 1995, the unions were there to represent the interests of their members. After 1995, when they were taken over by Democratic Socialists of America and the Communist Party USA, their role became to promote socialist revolution. Illegal immigrants are real bad for union workers, folks, but they are great for revolution. The unions are taking their members' money right now and selling their jobs down the river because the revolution comes first, folks. And it's not easy to get union members to vote directly against their own interests. It took Eliseo Medina, the Marxist, more than 5 years of hardcore lobbying inside the AFL-CIO, glad-handing and deal-making to get them to flip their position from anti-illegal immigrant to pro-illegal immigrant, which he achieved at the year 2000 at their national convention in Louisiana. Got to hand it to him, people. Wasn't easy. So why does he want this, folks? Why is this his life's work? Well, Medina, the revolutionary, let the cat out of the bag at a big progressive conference in Washington, D.C. 3 years ago. I got him on tape, I quote him in my book. He got in front of the comrades and said this: passing an immigration bill is the #1 priority of the progressive movement. We have to get citizenship and voting rights for our 11 million undocumented workers. And did he talk about compassion or reuniting families or giving immigrants a break or the American dream or helping the economy? Not a single bloody word, folks. All he said was this: in 2008, Latinos voted overwhelmingly for Obama and progressive candidates. If we stand with these people and get them citizenship and voting rights, they will stand with our movement. That will give us at least 8 million more Democratic Party votes. That will give us a governing majority, not just for the next few election cycles, but for the foreseeable future. In other words, forever. 8 million more votes, people. How much was the last one decided by? The last election? 2.5 million votes? 8 million more Democratic Party votes with the stroke of a pen. The first thing that happens is that Texas will go blue. You take the electoral college votes from Texas, your second most popular state, and add them to the electoral college votes from California, your most popular state. Add them together, folks. Do the math. It makes it impossible for the Republicans to ever elect another president. Can't be done, folks. One party state. And if you think the Democrats are arrogant now, you imagine what they'll be like with 8 million more votes in their pockets and the Republicans permanently out of office. People, would it just be the IRS they send after you? Would this country become like France or Germany? God, if only. Or will it become like Venezuela very quickly and Cuba not long after? Because that is their plan, folks. That is why they are doing this. And you have Republicans, people, telling you this is good for the GOP. These are not stupid people telling you this. They can add up numbers, folks. I bet you they know exactly what the checks from the Chamber of Commerce add up to. They know what 8 million more votes means. And they have no plan to counter this, folks. No plan at all. Yet they are still hell-bent on passing it. They are not only betraying their own party, folks, they are betraying their own country. And they deserve the same fate that Eric Cantor got at the hands of David Bratt in Virginia, folks. You did that. David Bratt did that, and he fought that election on the immigration issue. Now, the other thing my book is about is the individuals. Because I think these people should be held accountable for what they're doing to your country, folks. Deliberately doing. Now, anybody in this gathering, not counting military, has ever applied for a federal government job who is willing to admit it. You're all private sector people, are you? Good private sector people? Okay. I know for a fact, folks, that if you applied for a federal government job in this country, you need an FBI security clearance, even the lowest jobs. And they can go through your underwear drawers, folks. They check out your family background, your relatives, your education, foreign travel, drug habits, convictions. Because they need to be able to trust you, people. You're in the heart of the federal government. You might have access to state secrets one day. You might have the ability to influence public policy in a bad direction. You might be guarding the president. And this country has enemies, folks, who will exploit weak and dishonest people. I've got a friend who applied for a federal government job about 2 years ago, not even high level. The FBI drove from Virginia to Canada to interview his communist uncle, and on the basis of that interview, he was denied that position. And fair enough, folks. This is serious stuff we're talking about. They need to trust you. But what if you're a young Marxist radical who hangs around with the local communists and the unions, and they control the local Democrats? Someone like Barbara Lee, or Barbara Boxer, or Patty Murray, or Maria Cantwell, or Baghdad Jim, or Eddie Bernice Johnson, or Danny Davis, or Rosa DeLauro, or Judy Chu. Someone like that, people, and they can put a suit and tie on you, or a lovely woman's outfit, whatever it is. And they can get you elected to Congress. They can put you in, folks, in a safe seat. And there you can serve on the Homeland Security Committee, or the Science and Technology Committee, or the Armed Services Committee, even the Intelligence Committee. And you can have access to all sorts of government secrets, and you have the ability to influence public policy, not just on a national level, but an international level. You got real power, folks. How much of an FBI security check do you need for that position? None. Zero, folks. Because the people are supposed to vet the candidates, right? And the media is supposed to help you do it, right? How's that working out, guys? Can you see the problem there? Look, they did it with Mitt Romney and Sarah Palin. They went into them, folks. There was nothing you didn't know about them, because that was a question of character. You had a right to know everything, everything about those who might lead your country. You had a right to know about what Mitt Romney did with his dog on holiday, about Bain Capital, about allegedly beating up some young gay kid when he was 17. You had a right to know about that, folks. And you absolutely had to know about Sarah Palin's kids' Facebook pages. You had a right, folks. And you did, because they might be leading your country someday. But why do you not have a right to know about the elephant's graveyard of skeletons in Obama's closet? Or Barbara Boxer's, or Nancy Pelosi's, or Patty Murray's, or Raul Grijalva's, or Kirsten Sinema's, or Eddie Bernice Johnson's? Why don't you have a right to know about those guys? Maybe that D is a sort of protective mechanism, is it? People, you imagine if you were a foreign intelligence agent, a North Korean, a Cuban, a Nicaraguan, a Venezuelan, Chinese, Iranian, even a Russian, sitting up at the United Nations in New York with networks of friends and supporters in the unions and communist movements of this country. And some of those groups had the ability to put their sympathizers into your Congress or your Senate to get you any information they want or to influence public policy in directions favorable to you. Would you be doing your job, folks? Do you think they're so stupid and lazy they do not take advantage of that massive hole in your national security? People, those agents, if they screw up and don't do their job, they're not going home to a fat pension. They might go home to the gulag. There's a massive hole in your national security, folks. Do you think your foreign enemies in this country don't take advantage of it? Do you think they're that stupid and lazy? Would you not take advantage of it? You have members of the Congressional Black Caucus, and I quote Raul Castro boasting about this in my book, who go down to Cuba on a regular basis to talk to him about how they're going to change US foreign policy to ease trade and travel restrictions on Cuba. Basically, so the Cuban communists can send more spies and more terrorists and more drugs into your country. What do you call it, folks, when someone goes from your country to a foreign enemy country to help them against you? And is that a naughty thing to do, people? Is that a bad thing? It's happening every day, folks. And nobody says boo. And it's been going on for a while too. Any Vietnam veterans at the gathering today? Thank you. I knew there would be several. I knew it. Thank you, gentlemen. Well, here's a question for you. Was that war lost in the jungles of Vietnam? You won every battle, right? But is it true that the rules of engagement imposed on you forbade you from chasing the enemy to certain places, bombing certain places? They had refuges they could go to. You weren't allowed to occupy territory. You had to withdraw. Is that all true? And did that hold you back from winning that war? And when you withdrew, is it true that your government defunded the South Vietnamese military and basically guaranteed a communist victory? Is that correct? So you lost 58,000 of your brothers in that war, folks. 58,000, I would say most of those were completely unnecessary. That war could have been won very quickly had you been allowed to win it. You see veterans wandering around the streets of towns all over this country at 2 o'clock in the morning, right now, addled out of their brains, people. And who did it to them, guys? It was Democrats in your Congress working with the Communist Party USA, who is basically a slave of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union, which was allied to the Communist Party of North Vietnam. Do you think there might have been a little bit of treason going on there, folks? And how many of those people who sold your brothers down the river and were responsible for thousands of deaths and of your comrades and the South Vietnamese people, how many of them ever paid a single penalty for what they did, folks? One of them is Secretary of State. And Johnny Conyers is still in Congress, folks. How long has Johnny Conyers been in Congress, people? 100, 150 years now? He has been on the Judiciary Committee, or headed it, for decades. The Judiciary Committee is the body that writes the laws of this land at the federal level. It is the body that oversees the Federal Bureau of Investigation and grants its budget. The Federal Bureau of Investigation is the body that is supposed to investigate traitors and subversives and foreign agents in your government. Johnny Conyers has got a 50-year history with the Communist Party USA going up till this year. He's got a 40-year history with Democratic Socialists of America going up till 2013. He's got a 20-year history with the Workers' World Party, a pro-North Korean, pro-Iranian outfit going up till this year. John Conyers is a hardcore Marxist anti-American. But he is on the Judiciary Committee. He headed it, the body that grants the FBI its budget. What do you think would happen to the FBI's budget if they ever came after John Conyers or his other communist friends in your Congress? Can you see the problem there, folks? Can you see the conflict of interest and why these people get a free pass? We've got Charlie Rangel, Ways and Means Committee, the body that writes your tax laws. Doesn't obey them, but he writes them. 50 years with the Communist Party movement. Invited Fidel Castro to Harlem a couple of years ago. Pictures of him smiling on stage with the communist dictator. Member of at least 2 Soviet fronts that I know about. Rosa DeLauro, one of your very top Democrats, Nancy Pelosi's best friend and deputy, has an office in the headquarters of the Connecticut Communist Party at 37 Howe Street, New Haven. There's a picture in my book, 2 of them, of her hugging her best friend, Connecticut Communist Party head Joel Fishman, the daughter-in-law of a Soviet spy and the communist delegated by the party to deal with the Democrats, liaise with the Democrats. Raul Grijalva and Eddie Bernice Johnson, both used to write, and Jose Serrano, all have written for the Communist Party newspaper. Danny Davis, Jan Schakowsky, Jerry Nadler, all card-carrying members of Democratic Socialists of America were serving in your Congress. Paddy Murray from this state, long time history with the Washington State Communist Party. Baghdad Jim had Pat Stell, a leading Washington communist, on his staff for many years. Very close to the Communist Party, very close to Democratic Socialists of America, big time supporter of single payer. Use that word lightly. Guess what I'm talking about, guys? Shouldn't be hard to figure out. You people, the Tea Parties, the 912s, the Conservatives, you guys came out of nowhere. Where were you all those years? A bunch of amateurs and novices came out of nowhere and stood up for the Constitution, folks. And you blogged, and you marched, and you emailed, and you rallied, and you agitated, and you phone banked, and you put some spine into the GOP, and you alone, folks, took back the House in 2010. And people, that brought the agenda of the left to a grinding, screeching halt. Stopped them stone cold dead. They had it in the bag, folks. They were breaking out the vodka. Who is going to stand in their way, people? John Boehner? They worry about him? They had it in the bag, and a bunch of bloody amateurs and novices snuck up on them and took their toys away. And some of you wonder why they hate you, why they call you dirty names. People, you stopped them. All that work, and you stopped them, and you didn't even know. Look, you got to think about this. You're in a battle. Sometimes you don't see the big picture. You saved your country that year, people. You gave it another chance. You might not see that, but I can see it, as can millions of others around this world. And you don't get many thanks, people. You don't at all. But I'm here to thank you. Because if it hadn't been for you, the entire agenda of the left would be in now. Card check, cap and trade, green jobs, every scam under the sun would be locked in and passed into law. Obamacare would be locked down, and 10 or 12 or 20 million illegals would be voting this year. And where would you be then, guys? Where would this country be then? And where would my country be? You did save your country, folks. You need to look at it objectively and make that realization, because you did. And you might not get much thanks for that, but I'm telling you right now, there's a lot of grateful people out there. Now, you also did something very, very important. You people, the 912s, Glenn Beck, the Conservatives, you kick-started the Second American Revolution. I've been all over this country, folks, for 3 years now. I've spoken to more than 300 groups in 39 of the 57 states, folks. Just checking you're awake. I've been to the reddest of the red and the bluest of the blue. You get out of the big cities, folks. There are hundreds of thousands, millions of people who have read their Constitution, understand their Constitution, and are willing to fight for their Constitution. That was a phone box movement 10 years ago, people. It was tiny 5 years ago. Now it's all over. There are millions of people like you now, folks. Millions of people just like you. And you've fought back Common Core and Agenda 21. You've taken back school boards, county commissions, all over this country. Michigan is a right-to-work state because of people like you, folks. Could you believe that one? And you have put steel into the Republican Party, and they've taken back a whole bunch of state legislatures. And now many of them are giving the finger to the federal government. Is that important, folks? Would that have happened without you? No, it wouldn't have. Sometimes, folks, well, you think, would that immigration bill have passed through the last session if the Republicans hadn't been so terrified of what the Tea Party did to Marco Rubio and to Eric Cantor. They would have passed it without you folks. But where would the country be then? Sometimes I think you guys are a little bit like baby Superman. You really don't know your own strength, guys. I'll tell you something. I was in Washington, D.C. last year. I went to the 50th anniversary celebrations of the Institute for Policy Studies. Hardcore progressives, folks. Used to work with the KGB, now they work with the Cubans. The ideas factory of the Obama administration. I paid my 75 bucks, I put on my name badge, and I mingled with the Marxists. Because I wanted to know their thinking, people, what their plans were, their strategies. Know thine enemy. And I sat through several sessions, people, and I got bored. I got bored rigid. Because they talked about one thing all day. You. Tea Party this, Tea Party that, Tea Party this, Tea Party that. They took the state legislature's office. How do we not see this coming? How did they take us by surprise? What are we going to do about it? We're going to do all this work all over again. How do we stop the Tea Party? Hardly mention the Republicans once, folks. If you don't understand your own strength, your opponents do. Because they understand that you are the only thing standing between them and what they want. Why else do you think there's so much on your case, people? I'm going to do something now that's normally considered very, very bad manners. But I'm a Kiwi, right? And I can go home. Okay? Now, you don't go to someone else's country, do you, and tell them how to run things. It's like telling your neighbour how to do their decor. But I get asked all the time, folks, what do we do next? Do we form a third party? Do we stick it to the GOP? Do we join the GOP? Do we just do local issues? Do we forget about politics altogether? Do we play more golf and hunt more ducks? I see a movement, folks, 5 years in. A lot of hard, worn-out people. 5 years of hard, thankless work. A lot of betrayals, a lot of disappointments. You often see your disappointments and you forget to see your victories. A lot of people wondering where to go next. Well, my only value to you is as an outside observer. Because often you can see your neighbour's problems better than you can see your own. Right now, you have 100 years of progressivism to roll back, folks. That might take you 10, 20, 30 years. I don't know. But you've got two huge battles looming, folks. You've got 2014 and 2016. And you have to win. Because if you don't, the Democrats are going to legalise those illegal immigrants. And whatever you do after that may not count for very much. You have to win. But how do you do it and make that victory actually worth a damn? Because there's only one political force out there now that has any chance of stopping the Democrats in the time we have left. And that is the GOP. But the real question is this. What will the character of the GOP be? Because if the old guard have their way, the John Boehners and the Karl Roves, they'll give you a Jeb, Common Core is good, illegal immigration is an act of love, Bush, and you will almost certainly lose, folks, because your base will fracture. And even if you fluke a win, big deal, another progressive is in charge. But if you have a real fighter, a real patriot, someone with a proven record of taking on the odds, folks, someone who will put up their fists for the Constitution, maybe someone like Ted Cruz, for example, things could be very, very different, right? But how do you get there? I want to go back now to 1976, because I think this is illustrative. 1976, you have been losing your liberties, Republican, Democrat, for decades. And the people are very frustrated, but they had nowhere to go. But that year, they finally got an alternative, people, and they grabbed onto it. That year, a man came out of California who spoke of a shining city on the hill, and the Constitution and liberty. And hundreds of thousands of Americans, folks, got behind Ronald Reagan because they loved his message. And they pushed and pushed and pushed to get him the Republican nomination in 1976. And what did the Republican old guard do, folks? The Rockefeller Republicans, the Karl Roves of the day. What did they do, people? Everything they could to sabotage him. They hated Ronald Reagan, said there was no way he could be elected. Far too extreme. And they dirty tricked him and they slandered him, everything they could, people. Ronald Reagan was banned from Ohio that year by the Ohio State GOP. That's how much they hated him. And they just beat him, folks. They gave that nomination to Gerald Ford. And Ford went up against Jimmy Carter and Carter won. How did the Carter years work out for you guys? Interest rates up to here, gas queues round the corner, give away the Panama Canal, the Iranian hostage crisis. America's finest hour, right? You're still suffering from Carter, your second worst ever president, folks. But the really important point is this. The grassroots, the people just like you, did not give up. They got into that GOP, they took over the precinct committee positions, the township committees, the bodies who do all the endorsing and candidate selection. They got into that party and they prepared the way for 1980. And this time, they were not going to take no for an answer. When Reagan ran again, they got behind him and they forced that GOP to give them their candidate. Absolutely forced them, folks. And Reagan went up against Carter and took the country in a landslide. 48 to 2 states. People, the hostages were back the first day. The interest rates went down. The taxes went down. The economy boomed. He rebuilt the pride in your country and he rebuilt your military, folks. And he took out the Soviets without firing a single shot. Any better president in the 20th century, people? Anyone close? And why did you have a Reagan revolution? Because for one time, the people chose the candidate. People just like you. They stuck it to the Karl Roves of the day and they made the decision. Could there be a lesson for today, people? Because right now, folks, this country is Jimmy Carter on steroids. And you need Ronald Reagan on meth to turn this around, folks. Not just to go where Reagan did, go way beyond Reagan to actually gut your federal government and restore your constitution. You know that, people. But how are you going to get it? Because Reagan was a genius, folks. He could unite the social conservatives and the fiscal conservatives and the defence conservatives. Got them all singing off the same songbook. And he could bring the Reagan Democrats across. He was the great communicator, the great uniter. Right now, people, your base is very fractured. You've got 1 million libertarians who gave their votes to Gary Johnson last time. You got social conservatives, defence conservatives, fiscal conservatives, moderate Republicans. You got 2 million GOPers who stayed home last time. And you've got at least 20, maybe as many as 30 million evangelical Christians who are not even registered to vote. The most powerful bloc in the country, not even registered, folks. And with all the vote fraud out there, and the unions and the media against you, can you afford to ignore any element of your base if you want to win? Can you ignore any element of it, folks? But how are you going to get them together, folks? Because it may surprise you, but some of these groups don't like each other very much. A lot of disunity going on, right? So this is what I would, but one thing they all have in common is every one of those groups wants something. Everyone has something that turns them on. It might be getting rid of Common Core, protecting the Second Amendment. Everybody's got an issue, right? Favourite issue. So this is what I would do if I was a man like Ted Cruz. Doesn't have to be him, but I think he's the best place to do it. I'd want to rebuild that Reagan coalition right now, way before the primaries, way before Jeb Bush gets up ahead of steam. I'd go to all of these groups and say something like this: we're going to run, guys. I want to run, and I want you on board, and this is what you're going to get for it. The first thing that's going to happen, I'm going to put Alan West on my VP ticket right now. And then for you libertarians, I'm going to make Rand Paul the Secretary of the Treasury, and he can do what he damn well wants to the Federal Reserve and the IRS. Carte blanche. Sarah Palin, Secretary of Energy. Drill, baby, drill. Drill in your backyard if you want to. $1 a gallon gas for every American family. Open up your energy reserves. Sell oil to the world to pay off your debts. Scott Walker, Secretary of Labour. Right to work in every state, folks. Mike Lee, Secretary of the Interior. Return the federal lands to the states, folks. Open up your mining, get your forestry going again. John Bolton, Secretary of State. Tell your enemies where to get off, rebuild your alliances. Very important. Ambassador to the United Nations. No one, ever. Secretary of Health and Human Services, Dr. Ben Carson. End the welfare culture in this country, folks. Get people proud of themselves again. Attorney General Trey Gowdy. Stick it to the vote fraudsters, folks. Prosecute and jail them. Return justice to this land. And for those millions of Christians who don't care about politics, but they hate the state getting to their kids' heads, they don't want Common Core, they love homeschooling, I'd say to them, come out and vote for me and your millions, folks. I'll make David Barton Secretary of Education, and you're right to be protected. Name your whole cabinet, folks. Run as a team. Would you be inspired by a team like that? Would you get out of bed at 5 o'clock every morning and door knock and phone bang and get your neighbours on board and whatever it took to get those people into positions of authority? And would it unite the base people? Because everybody's getting something, right? Every single element of your base has people and policies to inspire them. And what makes people work their little butts off, folks? Is it inspiration or telling you that the other people are worse? How long since we've had inspiration in this country, folks? Since Reagan, isn't it? Isn't it a bit overdue? People, you've never had a bigger base of libertarians and real conservatives and constitutionalists than you have today. Far more than Reagan had. You put the base together with a leadership team like that, folks, who would stand in your way? What would the media do with that, folks? Because right now you put your eggs in one basket, and the media can demonise and rip apart a Mitt Romney. But you try demonising 20 Rottweilers who are running together as a team, all backing each other up and not taking any crap from anyone. What would the media do with that, guys? And you have a precedent for this, people. Ronald Reagan named his cabinet in 1976, but there's an even better one. You didn't have a founding father, folks. You had founding fathers. You had George Washington and Samuel Adams and Patrick Henry and Benjamin Franklin and James Madison and Thomas Jefferson. You had a whole team to run that revolution, folks. And they had their egos, they had their conflicting agendas, but they put them aside for the good of the revolution and the good of the country. And look what they gave you, folks. People, you want a second American Revolution in this country, you've got to run as a team. And it's got to be a team of proven leaders who will fight for the Constitution. You have that, folks, and you'll get what you want. So what I'm asking from you guys is 2 years and 2 months at least of the hardest political work you've ever done in your lives. You've done 5 years at this, folks. Hard, thankless work. Time away from your families and kids. I know your children often don't understand. That your grandchildren don't know why grandma can't come and see their game on Saturdays. I understand that, folks. I understand the financial sacrifice you've all made, the time sacrifices, the time away from enjoying your cultural activities, your retirements. I understand that. And I'm asking for more of it. 2 years and 2 months at least. Because I'll tell you straight, people, that time frame, 10,000 troops started that winter. Death, desertion and disease took 4,000 of them. The soldiers weren't paid for months. They were stealing every chicken they could. The farmers hated them. They were boiling up their own boots to eat the leather, people. The officers were eating their pet dogs to survive. Yet they went through that winter, and many more like them, chased across every state, losing way more battles than they ever won, freezing and starving in the snow, dodging British bullets. Every now and then, every few months, they might get home to visit their families, and sometimes all they'd find was a burnt-out farmhouse and graves, people. Yet they went through that for year after year after year. That army was getting smaller and smaller and smaller, folks. The revolution was almost done. Nobody thought they could win it. The British were sure of victory. Yet George Washington prayed at Yorktown and went on to take the British out, prayed at Valley Forge and went on to take the British out in a surprise attack at Yorktown. Won the war, folks. It ain't over till it's over. Who would have bet on George Washington's victory, people? A bunch of farmers and lawyers and blacksmiths and fishermen, labourers. But I've got to say, pastors, Bible in one hand, long rifle in another, took on the greatest military empire the world had ever seen. And against all of the odds, they beat them. How miraculous was that, folks? George Washington understood how miraculous it was. He knew the help he got. People, if you stand up for your Constitution, do you think the age of miracles is gone? Do you think if you stand up for your Constitution and give it all for your country, do you think you'll be abandoned? Do you think you'll be forsaken? You just have to stand up, folks. Do you think those patriots, freezing and starving, dodging British bullets, had any idea of their role in history? Any idea of the amazing country they were bringing to birth? Any idea of what you see around you now? We can understand their role because we can look back 200 years and we have perspective. What about you getting some perspective, folks? See your role. 200 years from now, imagine this, some young kid will get up in front of a high school in this town and say something like this: guys, I'm blown away. I found out, you know how we studied that second American Revolution in history, when everybody thought the country was done, but the patriots stood up and they saved the Constitution against all the odds. Look what they gave us, guys. Well, I found out something amazing. Made me so proud. I looked into my family background. I found out my great grandma and granddaddy, they were in the Kitsap Tea Party Patriots, guys. And how cool is that? So I want to say to you people, thank you so much for what you're doing for America, for my country, and for liberty. God bless America, and God bless the Tea Party. Thank you.
A couple of questions. We're going to take a couple of questions, and we'll learn the mic out. Who would like to ask a
Well, I just
question?
want to say something before the questions, if I may. I've got copies of my book there. They're 35 each, or if you buy more than one, it's 30. I don't get a check from the Koch brothers, like you don't, so these fund my travels around the country. The other thing we're doing is we're doing a movie of that book. It's going to be a full-length Hollywood production, documentary. Some of the same people who did America and 2016, time for release in the middle of next year to theatres and DVD all over this country. It's going to be the most hard-hitting political documentary ever produced in this country, and it's going to be out there a year before the next election, before the 2016 election. So I'm just going to say, it's going to cost us $400,000. We're going to raise about $300,000 from investors. We're going to do an Indiegogo appeal in September. That's a website you go to. A lot of films are funded that way. And you go there and you put in 20 or 50 or 10 bucks and you get a total of say 100,000, and that is your contribution to the cause. So when we do that, I would love to send the link to your group, and please have it circulated around so anybody who wants to contribute can do so, if that's all right. So, but other than that, any questions I'm up for.
2 or 3 questions, and then we can go on. Anybody have a question, just raise their hand.
Trevor, I got a question.
Yeah.
You know more about this country than we do. How did you get all this information?
The teleprompter up there. I've been studying American politics for 30 years, but I really kicked into gear after 2007 when I discovered Obama's ties to Frank Marshall Davis. Okay, said I did a year's research on Obama. I knew the communist movement, so I knew where to look. I'll tell you a little secret. The communists are atheists, right? So their only posterity is history, the papers they leave behind them to tell their story. So when they get old, they gather all their papers up, the minutes of meetings, their letterheads, their letters, put them in boxes and give them to the local university library. Because they think some communist historian is going to come there in 100 years and write a great book about their patriotic victories, you know, their patriotic life. They think we're too stupid and too lazy to go and look. But that's where I got my information, folks. I go into the belly of the beast and I dig it out because it's all there waiting.
Another question.
Yes, ma'am.
Have you communicated your ideas about running as a team to some of the folks that are talking about running?
Well, I know that several delegations have gone to Ted Cruz discussing it. We've got it out on Facebook, we've got the Cruz Coalition webpage, and we're working with some of Cruz's people to promote the idea, and Ted Cruz has used several elements of my speeches in his speeches. He's copying me. But I'm not going to be worried about that, I'm proud that he is. So he's definitely thinking about it, so we'll see what happens. He is going to run, he's out there now with his Run Ted Run petition. As soon as he gets 1 million signatures, he's going to declare. So anybody who can get a hold of that and help him get those 1 million, we're doing the country a favour.
On this side of the house, any questions? Okay, so we'll hold that thought. We're going to start a new tradition tonight. And two mics don't work because we've got that feedback going on. So, in previous meetings, you notice that we've started doing some Tea Party flavored mementos. So I'm going to ask Sandy to come up, and on behalf of the Kitsap Patriots Tea Party, Sandy, that's you. I've not ever known her to be shy, but apparently today. And it's just because I don't want to be the one to stab you.
Okay.
So we're going to start a new tradition of giving our special guests this some Tea Party bling.
Wow.
And Sammy,
Look, I'm proud to wear it. I'll wear that right across the house. Yeah. It's very cool.
and Dana, get that camera up here and get a good shot.
Got it.
It's a great badge and I'll wear it. Look, I just want to say, people, the only reason I come to this country is because you guys are doing what you're doing. If you weren't doing it, I wouldn't be here. I'd be wasting my time. So I'm proud to be amongst you, and I really commend you for what you're doing.
Isn't that fashionable? Any more questions?
Well, nobody else is going to ask a question. I'm going to answer this. Yeah, I know what you're talking about, like Federalist background checks and so forth and so on. You become president, you get all the, you know, the secrets. But you've got guys in Congress that aren't driving a school bus or driving an airplane, but they're running the whole country, and they don't have a friggin' drug test. Why isn't anybody waking up and saying, give these guys a drug test? I want to know if the President of the United States is playing golf because he's on marijuana, which he's already agreed that he smoked. And he probably smoked.
Well, look, I would say this.
You know, what is he on?
Yeah.
That's what I want to know.
You're quite right, and drug use is a big security problem. No, so I would say, okay, what the Republicans should do is say, we're going to have a law that anybody who wants to serve on any committee in this government needs an FBI security clearance and regular drug tests. And half the Democrats would have to excuse themselves straight away, and that would embarrass the hell out of that party, and they would start testing their own candidates to make sure that didn't happen, to give them a chance of power. So, you know, national security is big time, folks, and you have, see, Clinton screwed things up too, because he wouldn't get a security clearance at all, and neither would Hillary. Both of them are Marxists. But Clinton, before Clinton, everybody in the White House had to have a security clearance. Clinton changed it so the president could determine who needed one and who didn't. That's how Van Jones, an avowed communist, got his job. That's how John Holdren, who's got a long time history with Soviet front groups, got his job. That's how, you know, there's so many Marxists up there, it's unbelievable, because the president decides who gets the clearance and who doesn't. Well, that power should be taken away. That should not be in his hands. So you need FBI security clearances, you need drug testing right across the federal government, and especially in the heart of it, in the White House, the House of Representatives, and the Senate. Why would you not have them there, folks? The questions are starting to come now, so we could answer. Yes, sir.
Since you talk to so many Tea Party groups around the country, and we hear that Tea Party is no more, can you give us a picture of the future?
Look, I could do a full-time if I wanted. I have been, as I say, I've been to 38 or 39 states. I've met Tea Party people all over. It is a vibrant and dynamic movement. Some places the numbers are a bit down, some places the numbers are still growing, but everywhere there's greater maturity. There are good relations in most states between the Tea Party and the GOP. You wouldn't hear that, but that's the case. They're working together usually. It's a mature movement that's making a big difference. The people, I see it, I've probably met more Tea Party people than anyone else in this country. Certainly anyone from overseas. I'm qualified to judge. It ain't dead, it's mature. Just because you're not rallying in your hundreds of thousands doesn't mean you're not politically effective. You are in the GOP, you're in the social movements, and you're making a big difference, folks. And anyone who says you're dead, it's the same. The only people who say you're dead are the same people who say you can keep your doctor.
I have a question on your idea on how to get all those people who aren't voting and participating to motivate them. I know the team idea, but still we've got to get the vote out. And how do you get the vote out?
Well, why did 2 million GOPers stay home last time? Because they were not inspired to vote. They didn't think it would make a difference. And we say, you've got to get the young people out, right? We've got to get the young people involved in politics. So we need to use all their social media and their Facebook, and that's going to get the young people involved. That's just garbage, folks. I'll give you 2 examples of people who have got young people involved in politics in huge numbers. And I'll show, and it's very, very clear how they did it. The first one is Ron Paul from Texas. Okay, I've got disagreements with Ron Paul on foreign policy, etc., but I'll give him credit. He can command huge rallies in the universities. All the politically active kids in the universities are either socialists or Ron Paul libertarians. The young people love Ron Paul like a chocolate, folks. And I get Republicans that say to me, well, to get the young, you need cool, charismatic candidates, young guys with nice haircuts, good suits, you know, like Marco Rubio. You know, slick, cool, charismatic. Ron Paul is slick and cool and young and charismatic, is he? He's a grumpy old bugger. You know, but the young love him like a chocolate because he's a principled grumpy old bugger. He stands up for the Constitution, he's consistent in his principles, he stands for the underdog, and he never ever backs down. And the young people love him, folks, because young people don't want to be part of the country, the Republican Country Club. They want to be part of the Rebel Alliance that's saving their country and fighting for what's right. The other one, people, I've already mentioned him, Ronald Reagan. How many 60s hippies turned conservative because of Ronald Reagan? Probably a couple here tonight. You know, because he didn't speak of gross national product figures and the things the Republicans think turn people on. He spoke of a shining city on the hill and American exceptionalism and the Constitution and liberty. And he spoke from the heart. What do young people vote with, people? The head or the heart? What do most people vote with? It's the heart, folks. Ronald Reagan could reach the head and the heart. The Republicans only aim for the head. The Democrats go straight for the heart and straight for the gut, and that's why they get voters. They forget the head. They know it's a waste of time for their policies. Yeah. Seriously. I'm not kidding. You know, so you look at it. You want to get people voting, you have to give them inspiration. Breathe life into them. You have to have a cause that inspires them and leaders that don't back down. You look at the inspiring leaders of the 20th century, folks. Ronald Reagan, Winston Churchill, Margaret Thatcher. Winston Churchill, people, didn't promise the British people paradise and milk and honey. He promised them blood and fighting on the beaches against their enemy. He gave them an honest assessment of their situation. So does Ron Paul. So did Ronald Reagan, but he could say it with a bit of humour and a few laughs. He's a genius, people. But the inspiration is the thing. I wear my Reagan badge a lot in airports. I've had 16-year-old girls with wacky-looking goth haircuts come up to me and say, "Wasn't he great?" How do you think I'd get on with the Gerald Ford badge, folks? People, you'll get, if Ted Cruz ran with the team like that, you would get all those union guys would start voting Republican because they want their kids working, getting jobs on the energy fields. You would get liberal soccer mums supporting you because they want to get rid of Common Core because they see it screwing up their kids' education. If you stand up for what's right, you wouldn't have any problem with volunteers or getting people to vote. The only people who wouldn't vote are the people you don't want to vote because they're so dumb they don't take any notice anyway. But you get everybody who does care about it, you'll get them all voting. You've got to have the inspiration and you've got to get the church people inspired because you've got to give them something they want too. They've got to know this is going to be a better country for their vote, and they're going to get people like Ben Carson and David Barton and power to give them what they want. That's how you do it. Just look at it, people. In business, do you do anything in business if you don't have an incentive and a clear profit for the investment you put in? Do you do anything in education? Do you go to college and spend $100,000 on a degree if you don't know exactly the salary that's going to give you and the fields it's going to open up for you? You know specifics. Specifics breeds willingness and enthusiasm. Yeah, we're expected to go into political activism all the time and give it our all for some nebulous promise from some vague no-hoper who won't tell us a thing and can't be trusted. We have to tell the people what they're going to get, we have to tell the people what they face, and we have to tell the people who is going to lead them. If we can do those three things, you won't lack volunteers and you won't lack voters, man. Guarantee it. Sir, the man over the back.
You spent a lot of time on the executive and the legislative branch. Why did you kind of leave out the judicial branch, and don't you see an opportunity going after, you know, a half a dozen people rather than trying to get 300 million to do the work? Why can't we concentrate, or is there a strategy to concentrate on the Supreme Court folks who are supposed to honor the Constitution?
Well, there's two things there. We talk about the three co-equal branches of government. The Supreme Court was never supposed to be co-equal to the legislature and the executive. They have taken on that role. They have built their own role. It was supposed to be a check on the Constitution. All that was supposed to happen was legislation that was controversial was supposed to go to them, and they would say, yes, it's constitutional, or way beyond that. So I'm not there to want them to encourage going further on it. I would love term limits on Supreme Court justices. And the very big danger, any one of those old justices, liberal justices, could, or even the conservative ones, if one or two of them die or retire in the next couple of years, and Obama gets another one, folks, we're in big trouble. Huge trouble. Because Roberts can't be relied on, that's for sure. You know, so the Supreme, look, I take your point, it's hugely important, and, you know, maybe another scholar can take that on, but I got my hands full on the legislative branch, you know. There's a lot more, there's radical Islam, there's the Bilderbergers, the Council on Foreign Relations, there's a whole bunch of threats to this country, and you're right, the Supreme Court's a huge one, but my job in the meantime is to focus on that legislative branch, which is really the most powerful. And the enemy are in there, folks, and nobody knows it. Until I talked about it tonight, did you have any idea of the infiltration of that body? And you're more educated than most Americans are, people. You've been studying this for 5 years and most of you didn't know about it. Well, how do you think the rest of the public feels about it? They have no idea. And it's got to be exposed, or otherwise they're going to keep getting worse and worse. Why do you think you have a centre-right populist and left-wing government? Because of the infiltration of Marxists in there who have a very different agenda than you have. That's why. Yes, sir.
You mentioned John Conyers.
Yeah.
Is he in your book?
Yeah.
What are you looking him up on?
Yeah, look, it goes state by state. So it starts, the states are alphabetical, so you go to Michigan, chapter halfway through, you have John Conyers, Debbie Stabenow, Gary Peters. They're all in Michigan delegation. California's got a whole bunch, New York's got a whole bunch, Illinois's got a whole bunch, Washington does okay, you know. I'll tell you, did you know that Washington was once the most communist state in the entire United States? In the night between 1936 and 1946, this state was controlled by the Commonwealth Federation, which was a communist-controlled organisation. They used to talk about the 48 states, and they used to talk about the 47 states and the Soviet of Washington. Seriously, you had Hugh DeLacy as one of your congressmen, a card-carrying member of the Communist Party, or serving as a Democratic congressman. He left Congress, went on to live in Southern California, continued his communist activity, was involved with at least 5 Soviet spies that I know of, 5 of them, plus 2 Chinese spies, and happened to befriend a local congressman, fed him information, got information from him, was his best friend. That congressman later became Secretary of Defense and head of the CIA, Leon Panetta.
Sounds like a good reason to read the book.
Yeah, I mean, look, the people who want the books can come over here, I'll sign them for free. But, you know, please buy them because that funds my thing, and that's the best resource you can have, finding out exactly who is who in your Congress and who you need to get rid of.
Better get in line because I saw a couple of people poaching on
Yeah, there's more books. Once we sell these, there's more books, so don't worry. Yes, I do.
Yeah.
Oh, I went this year, you know, I got to.
Oh, yeah.
That's the problem.
Is that his brand and LinkedIn on?
Yeah. This
If you
woman
put
that
on YouTube, you're trying to link it to the
well,
Oh, yeah. I saw the one in Spokane.
You've already heard him.
I had a lot to the
Yeah, I would definitely like more people to see that.
I tried to so that I could think about maybe
He's talking about.
and it's going to be harder on me. But it made me mad.
Yeah, I've never
Same for you, Rick.
My son was there.
I was getting missing was talking about the cabin.
Oh, I know. Yes.
So I wasn't about swimming, so I said, well, it's going to be